Welcome, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to David Brooks. He's a criminologist and a counselor. David, in my life, there were so many seasons of my life where I hid Melodye. I kind of kept myself in the dark, and I thought that was a way of protecting myself, because if you really knew the real me, you wouldn't like me. So I had to portray what I wasn't, and I realized that was not strength. I thought it was strength. I thought it was self-protection. But in actuality, I learned that it was a fear of man. So what would you say to someone who is keeping themselves hidden inside of themselves?
I would say that the way to get out of that is to work on being transparent.
That's scary.
Being transparent is very scary because now you're vulnerable, and whenever you're vulnerable, you set yourself up to be hurt. That's the reason why we have issues with marriages staying very short. They say if you make it 5 years, like you've broken like that. It's like most marriages don't make it till 5 years. And to be honest, the reason why it's not is because they're not transparent with each other. Everybody's trying to people please each other. They're trying to make everyone happy. And I know for me, and I just got to use me. There was a point when I was trying to live in the streets. I was a school teacher. I was tried to be in the church. I mean, I wanted to be a family person, but I also had these other parts of my life. And I had clothes that matched my particular environment. If I dressed this way, it's because I was going here. I dressed this way because I was going to that place. And what happened was I created that pseudo community, but with all of this pseudo identity things that I needed. I needed the car, I needed the money, I needed all this prestige. I was searching for all of that, but it was all exterior so that I could hide behind it. And I think what happens with people with pain and hurt is that we never want to be vulnerable to people. So we never become transparent. So for me, once I felt valued as a person, then I said, you know what? I'm just going to be one person. And I'm going to be that person whether I walk into a church house, whether I go into a government building, whether I'm sitting in a counseling session. I don't change. I'm just me. And what happened was I learned that people don't like me. Some people do like me, but it's not for me to orchestrate the way I deal with people according to how they're going to treat me, because I can make all of these people happy, and at the very end, I'm not happy. And so what does that mean for me? Is that I need to change. Change is very hard. I think change is one of the hardest things for a person to go through. And then whenever we so let's look at change. If we look at change in the scientific way, okay, you have a chemical change and then you have a physical change. Chemical change, well, let's start with physical change. Physical change is like a solution. Like Kool-Aid, you put sugar, water, and then you put this lovely tropical delight and you start. But then all of a sudden you have this thing called Kool-Aid. But if you let it sit too long, then it starts to separate and it starts to go back into what it looked like before. But when you have that chemical change, like fire, like when you burn a piece of paper, it can no longer come back. So it's a chemical change. I believe that in our lives, we're like water. We only change to the environment. So if the environment gets cool below a certain degree, then we change into a solid. If we warm that solid up, it turns back to a liquid. If we turn it up to a higher level, it turns into a gas. And I think as people, we just change for the environment. We think that we look like a solid or we look like a liquid or we look like a gas, but when you really take a close look, you're still the same. And so I think for us to become transparent is we have to go through those chemical changes. And I think that's why people are led to God, because he says he will renew your mind. He will renew it. Whenever that's renewing, that's a chemical change that he wants to make inside of us. But we don't want to accept that chemical change because we want to hold on. It's like my kid, when my kid was a child, he had 4 quarters and I needed the 4 quarters and all I had was a $5 bill. And I told him, I will give you the five, just give me the 4 quarters. But that one bill didn't seem like it was as much as the 4 quarters. And he held on to it with all of his might, no matter how much I explained to him. And I think that's what happens with people when they're scared of being transparent, is they hold on to this old self, but there's a new self that's waiting for them. But you have to let go of that being devalued, being put down, the shame and all of that. You have to set that to the side and grab a hold of the new life. And that's being transparent, open, allowing people to see into you so that you can see into them. And I think that's a major issue with our community, is that we don't become transparent. And so we are just walking around hurting.
One thing I've learned through the years is the more transparent I am, the more I have truly meaningful relationships. And though some may not like me, there is so many more who do, because they're looking for people to be real, authentic, and open. Because we get to model the way before others. If we're transparent, others will see that and say, you know, I want to do that too. You know, when you can see how valuable you are, it'll become so much easier to be transparent, because it's not what you've experienced, it's the beauty of the treasure that you carry.